kind of transition a bit now from the focus so much on PCI to talk more about the industry in which you compete, the EMS industry, and not to ask you about competitors, but to talk about some industry, some trends and some things, and to see, kind of gain your thoughts and insights on these. And I want to begin has to do, the COVID pandemic that we've all, or hopefully putting in our rearview mirror soon, had a lot of impact on the industry. Part of that was acceleration of trends of, especially what's talked about in EMS, is digitalization and automation. So let me begin by asking, how do you view those two issues and the impact within the industry?
In fact, very interesting development, Eric. I would say that if we have seen over the last 1 year, 2020, the COVID year, 2021, I think we are still in this environment. It became very clear that highly automated and highly digitized company seems to prevail during the COVID pandemic, right? Very, very clear. And we can see that companies who are highly automated, highly digitized, they tend to, we have seen they recover very fast during the COVID pandemic, and they can adopt to the new norm much quicker than companies who are not in that type of environment. And they tend to transform also. They tend to transform their business and operation more expeditiously because of this type of foundation that they build up, I would say. I think you all know, for example, during the COVID pandemic, there are a lot of restriction of movements, right? Mandated by the government, and companies who are highly automated or less reliance on production workers' labor, they can turn on manufacturing, meeting the mandatory requirement, but they can still churn out output, right? So I think this has been the type, I would say, a very disruptive type of landscape, right? Transformation landscape that companies, and this automation, digitalization is something that companies, I would say, by no choice, they have to move into that in order to continue their business into the future. Yes.
And just to remain competitive, I think you're absolutely, it's become the new table stakes, so to speak. So, the other, and I think that's right, kind of that agility, that being flexible as you're talking, that to respond quickly. We just dealt with this big disruption, and history teaches us that there's more disruptions coming, even if we don't know what they are yet. So I think it's the nimble that will survive, so to speak. So another big challenge, obviously, it was accelerated this year, was the whole material supply chain challenge. And so you're an old procurement manager. I'm sure that those are probably difficult and challenging conversations to have with suppliers and customers even. So, but what's the impact been for on PCI, and how are you managing it?
Yeah. So this current so-called constraint in supply is something that I would say kind of unprecedented. I've seen market tightness like 3 times in the last 25 4 times, but this time around is really, really more challenging. And I think that's primarily because we have like a void of vacuum last year in terms of demand. And I think this time around, when things are recovering economy-wise, everybody just accelerate, right? A lot of buying demand, a lot of acceleration in demand, therefore choking up the whole supply. So the way how we have been managing, I think, on a couple of fronts. The nice part is that before the pandemic came in, I think we, in 2019, that year, we did quite a lot of work to rationalize our supply base, just to get ourselves a bit more transformed in the supply base side. We have been traditionally focused a lot on working with distributors, with electromech suppliers in Southeast Asia. So in 2019, one of the initiatives we launched is to realign our supply base, to expand our touch base more to North Asia and a bit more into US and Europe for certain distributors, right? And because of the initiative, not knowing that pandemic is coming, of course, I think that set a very nice foundation. When the pandemic came in 2020, we have a lot of leverage on areas that are not too severely affected by pandemic. Of course, I would say it's a bit of musical chair, because when the COVID first hit China, China's supply base was incapacitated. We have the Southeast Asia and other regions supply base to tap to. But when the other regions were affected, when China came back on board, right, a bit more stable, recovering, we had that options to draw supply from the various fronts, right? So I think this is in terms of supply base. Now, the other front that what we did is this. In 2020 last year, I think despite the whole economy has sort of tanked, I would say, we still have quite a good number of customers continue to do well during COVID because of the type of business they do, like support the work from home, the logistic. So the demand actually was moving quite nicely despite of pandemic, demand on our activities. So we have decided to sort of work with these customers to buffer more materials in-house, right? Again, not knowing that the demand is going to just spike up, but we decided to launch into this material buffering program, right? Sort of help us to have good leverage when we come to the current phase of constraint, right? So we think we have that. So the first two things I spoke about is more on the operation front, how we make it. But last point, I think is very important. The fact that we have a design engineering team allow us actually to do a lot of redesigning of products, qualify more alternate source for our customers, because we have this very strong design team, allowing this type of additional type of work on top of operation that we can work on. So these are the three fronts of activities we have been doing, right, to allow us to mitigate the material supply constraint.
Yeah, that's excellent. It sounds like you had a good crystal ball back in 21-9 there.
No, we were just doing what we think is right, right?
Yeah.
a nice foundation that we have built up help us to bridge through these current challenges.
Yeah. No, and again, congratulations. That sounds like that paid off very nicely. Because if I'm not mistaken, the impact on your business last year wasn't that severe, right? Was there growth, or was it just?
Last year, actually, we did better than the previous year.
Okay.
So
I think work you've been doing had been prep. Okay.
Right.
Excellent. Now, and that's one of the things, it's the business. One of the historic challenges for EMS has always been profitability. It's often seen, and with OEMs, especially trying to drive down costs, right, for another discussion. How do you approach this with customers? How do you approach the whole challenge of profitability in the industry?
Yeah. So I think the pressure on profitability definitely will continue to stay in the EMS space, because that is, like you say, staple expected to do things in a more cost economical manner to service a customer. So the way we approach it has been along this milestone, and then we are actually also looking ahead how that we can service the customer more, because at the end of the day, I think it is the value chain that we can create for customers, right, that will command a certain payback. They want to engage you and want to pay you a little bit more, because the value that you can create for customers is going to be meaningful to them. Now, so I think what a lot of EMS companies, like what we have also done, is that everyone will jump into providing more design engineering solutions, right? Doing more ODM. I think that is one of the very pivoting pillar to continue to maintain certain profitability. Supply chain management is also, I think, an area that everyone builds on. But for PCI, actually, we are looking things a little bit ahead. That two areas is, I think, important pillar that we want to continue to strengthen. But our view and our vision is to look at offering solution, not just on the technology front, but to look at the whole ecosystem of technology. That is the type of things I'm looking. When I say ecosystem, is that, for example, we have solution platform, right? When we offer to our customers, we want to tell them that we can actually have solutions around a more expanded ecosystem that they're looking at. For example, we have IoT, right? IoT is just a communication device, but we are actually telling customers we can do data harvesting for you. a sensor is just to sense information, but we actually goes into the space of looking at the ecosystem that we can support. The hardware they require to build this ecosystem, from data collection, data analytics, sending information back meaningfully to the application ground, right? So these are the value that we want to think along, so that we can move a little bit ahead of the curve to service the customers in that light. So it's an ecosystem building of solutions.
Yeah. And that's good. And kind of hand in glove with that, and you've mentioned it throughout, is the talent and the engineering talent and having those people.
Sure.
And so I guess I'd like to hear kind of, how is that, you know, it's a challenge in the United States in the industry, also in Europe, I hear it spoken about, and finding the talent and finding workers can be a challenge, and finding good workers. And I imagine for a company that has such an engineering focus, you know, how is it in Asia? How is it for you and for PCI in finding the right people?
Actually, in Asia, in PCI, I think we face similar challenges like people in the US and Europe, that finding good talent, good engineering, good management people, good customer service guys are also equally challenging, right? Despite there could be a bit broader or larger population base. So the challenges, I think, will continue to exist. But, you know, Eric, this COVID-19 pandemic actually has helped to, I use the word, disrupt the physical geographical boundary. We realized that we can work from home.
Yeah.
So the way, like for PCI, how do we overcome this? When we face in the past, we have this physical boundary of wanting people to work in a certain office, right? This doesn't quite exist today, because we are actually hiring people in customer service, in supply chain management, out from our Singapore office, right? We have people in other region that we hire that is doing what we traditionally used to be doing in the Singapore office or Batam operation before the pandemic. So I think this work from home, virtual working with very high technology platform actually help to ease off the constraint of finding people just within your physical geographical boundary. So I think that actually help elevate some of the issues we faced in the past.
Yeah. And that's a great perspective, and I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but I think it's when you remove that,
yeah, right,
more becomes possible. Your pool becomes larger, right? So that's excellent. So, are there any other challenges from your perspective running PCI that you see kind of facing the industry as we're coming out of the pandemic in 2021?
Oh, I think one of the challenge we will continue to face, I think, is the talent retention, right? Evolving from the previous question you said. So I think we continue to spend a lot of time, management, how to bring in talent ahead of time of our business growth, how to groom them, and more importantly, how to maintain them. Because I think when we have all the hardware, we have all the system, processes, doctrine put in place, we need good people to manage it in a disciplined fashion to allow our service standards continue to be improving and upgrading. So I think this is one of the core challenge that we continue to see.
Yeah, you know, and what I think one of the positive outcomes of the pandemic is, before I used to always joke that most companies always said that people were their most valuable asset, and it oftentimes sounded like lip service, that it was just something that, you know, marketing said they had to put out there. And I think the pandemic, though, made it real, and it really reinforced it, and people realize how critical that, as you're speaking to right now, having that good talent and being able to retain that talent is to the success of the organization. So
Right.
Yeah. So excellent. So what, in closing then, let me just ask you, what, as you're looking forward for 2021 over the next 12 months, what do you see coming for PCI in the EMS industry? Do you see things kind of for you, it didn't go down, but do you see the industry kind of returning to some normalities, working through some of these problems? Where are you on these, on the future?
Yeah, I think in the next 12 months, for the industry as well as PCI, I think the business activity is going to be very, very encouraging. I think the growth momentum is going to be there primarily for two reasons. One is I think the recovery, I think, plays a part for demand to be coming back, and then that's for EMS industry, including PCI, we are going to ride on that momentum. And I think they are, because of this post-COVID pandemic, there are new growth area that is evolving, which will perhaps already start to kick in and will lead the growth into the future years. For example, one of the very, very clearly seen segment is the EV market. It's a big transformation in the automotive market from in the traditional combustion engine environment, accelerating into EV space. And I think that will be, if you look back years ago in the 1990s, the mobile phone device was like a big disruptive solutions, right? And I think the EV is going to be the big one that is coming into play in the next. I think that will give a lot of electronic demands. And we all know an EV has got so much more electronic contents compared to the traditional IC solutions, right? So I think that will probably reach into the future year. I think 2020 is going to be a good year for most EMS. Of course, PCI, we are going to ride on that. And the future years is along this new technology demand.
Yeah, I like the analogy with the cell phone. I think there've always been historically certain products that were growth drivers for the industry, from cell phones, servers in the day, and EV. I would tend to agree with you. I think that should be a good driver for the industry for the reasons you articulated. So, EL, thank you very much for your time today, sir. This has been very interesting. I've learned a lot about your company, about kind of what differentiates you in the industry. I think our audience will appreciate that as well. As I always do at the end of this, I always encourage the audience that if there's any interest in PCI, you should try to reach out. If you cannot get a hold of EL, get a hold of me, and I will do my best to put you in touch with him or with people at PCI. EL, thank you. Hopefully we can get another update on the activities with PCI. It sounds like very impressive company with a good future ahead of you still, even after 50 years in the industry. So the best may still be to come.
All right, thank you, Eric. I think very nice speaking to you today. Very nice dialogue conversation. I appreciate your time, and then we'll catch up again. Thank you very much for arranging this session. Nice speaking to you. All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.